Take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
Ana Kasparian has dropped her latest diss track against The Majority Report and Emma Vigeland and Sam Cedar. She took a whole segment out on the Young Turks to respond to them making fun of her retracting her previous predictions about Project 2025. She had said in 2024 that Project 2025 was just made by some conservative cranks that were not necessarily connected to Donald Trump's campaign or Donald Trump's prospective administration, and essentially claimed many times that the media was exaggerating in informing people about Project 2025 and taking it very seriously, because all the indications were pretty clear that this was the plan if Donald Trump were to come back to power. And so Cenk and Anna both pretty much went along with the narrative that that was not the plan, and that the plan was something more reasonable, so that even if Donald Trump did win, which they weren't necessarily advocating for, it's not going to be that bad, guys. And all of this stuff about Project 2025 is media panic. And it does kind of get back to a pretty central theme of coverage that we get from TYT, which is this contrarianism that isn't really based on a whole lot and doesn't actually serve anybody much good in its use, and really the only function that it seems to serve, and what it seems like they're trying to do, is make themselves stand out and cover things in a way that I guess other people aren't covering it, or, you know, trying to be the shrewd analysts that point out, oh, this is media exaggeration, this is a media panic. And so that dichotomy is interesting. Their interest in pointing out media panics seems to be pretty inconsistent, because in this case, when it comes to Project 2025, Anna was wrong. And to her credit, she admitted she was wrong. But even in doing so, she still is kind of waffling about it. I mean, she said pretty clearly that she was wrong, that Donald Trump would not implement Project 2025 if he were president, because now that is clearly what's happening. Russell Vought being approved for Trump's cabinet was something that she mentioned as a persuasive factor for her. And but then even in admitting that she was wrong about that, she still is kind of defending this instinct that she had, that Donald Trump would not alienate his base by opting for Project 2025. Because in her estimation, Donald Trump's base hates Project 2025. And so that was why she felt that if Trump were to be elected, that he would be smarter than to institute something that they hate. And now we exist in a reality where a lot of Republicans do seem to be mad about some of the things that Project 2025 entailed. And now they are screaming at Republicans about it. And yet Donald Trump is doing it anyway, and probably isn't going to stop. He might compromise on a couple things, and we'll see if any of these Republican senators and Congress people stand up to Trump, although, you know, good luck with that. But I will note that this is exactly the same thing that happened in Trump's first term, when Donald Trump tried to take away Obamacare, when the plan was for the Republicans to completely repeal Obamacare with no replacement plan at all. They were getting absolutely screamed at in town halls, the same way we're seeing now, by their own voters. Republicans were. They were also fully in control of the government at that time. But even then, the only thing that stopped them from repealing Obamacare with no replacement was John McCain coming in at the last moment and voting no. So, that's proof right there. That is an example of the Republicans being well aware that their base hates something and not caring. And one of the things that she takes issue with, which I will get to a little later, that Sam said in response to her, or Sam in responding to her issuing this retraction. It was something that the Majority Report covered, and that is what Anna is responding with this scathing diss track now for, because she viewed the segment that Majority Report did as, I don't know, I guess the same thing. At this point, this is the pattern with TYT, is that any form of criticism is an attack, and Anna can make spurious claims about Kamala Harris doing ad buys on the Majority Report, and yet them responding, them taking that as a signal that the relationship between these two networks is no longer friendly, and they are both open to criticizing each other if they see fit. Responding in kind is an attack. And so what does she do? She attacks back. I mean, this is the dynamic of every type of conflict or fight that escalates out of control. And, oftentimes it's caused by one person who perceives everything as an attack and is unduly aggressive. So in my opinion, that's what we see from Ana Kasparian here. She seems to feel that it's necessary to rip into her detractors in this situation. And so I want to get into a couple clips here and talk about it. That's the biggest issue, is that, Anna getting the prediction of Project 2025 wrong is not just sort of like an isolated mistake. It reflects a larger lack and abdication of discernment that is not serving their audience well. And meanwhile, she's trying to point to the Majority Report as being, oh, these guys don't care about Republican voters. They're not experts on Republican voters. So let me show you that clip real quick, because I don't know, this is just hilarious to me that she thought this clip made Sam Seder look bad. But let me play it real quick.
Here he is touting his openness to understanding people who vote differently than he does.
We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Well, wait.
So let's pander to them first.
Pick your battles. It doesn't have anything to do with talking to Trump voters.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or flattering false
You've just decided to make some weird connection there. Yeah. We can't take the power back without talking to Trump voters and making them realize their mistake. Actually, no, we can't. There's millions and millions of other people who need to be motivated to get into the fight.
Is that I am coming from the Polymarket Studios?
Insulting them and lumping them all together as the worst among them doesn't help either. I don't know when we have done that with all 78 million people, but I got news for you. The percentage of those who voted for Mitt Romney, they can suck my. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about any of that.
So yeah, I mean, when I first saw that, I hadn't seen that clip from the show, but when I saw that in Anna's video, that killed me. That's awesome. That's awesome. And I get we have to reach out to Republican voters. We got to be sympathetic to them. But Anna operating from that as a base assumption of what Sam should be doing in this clip when faced with these questions and these criticisms is hilarious. At what point did that become the number one priority? Reaching out to Republican voters. That was Kamala Harris's priority in the 2024 election. It's a failed strategy. Point blank, period. The people who are moderate, lifelong Republican voters who hate Donald Trump are never going to vote for any Democrat. And anybody who's younger and more on the pulse than older voters like that are going to go with Donald Trump. We see this. This is a stubbornness from Republican voters that it's just not worth trying to chip away at. We are wasting resources. That's exactly what the Kamala Harris campaign did, is waste resources on trying to flip Republicans, and none of them turned out for her. If they had, it probably would have been overrepresented in the results, because the votes that were suppressed and thrown out in this election were in Democratic and black and brown areas. So if lifelong Republicans were coming out and voting for Kamala Harris, we would have seen those numbers. The numbers we didn't see are the people who do normally turn out for Democrats, and so their votes and their names on the voter rolls were targeted. So this theory of reaching out to Republicans is absolutely not a path to any type of progress of any kind. And I mean, Sam gives the answer for it right there. He says there are millions of voters that need to be activated, not Republican voters, people who are not being reached, people who are reached by candidates like Bernie Sanders, by candidates like AOC, candidates that normal people have more familiarity with, and issues that normal people have more familiarity with a way of speaking that reaches those normal people. That's the strategy that the left needs. The left does not need some compromising with the right type of strategy. And so, I don't know, I just thought that was hilarious. Because that's why people like Sam. It's literally, that's why. That's why Sam has built the career that he has. Is because he doesn't give a fuck about people who voted for Mitt Romney. That's great. And I get that it might not be the most well-rounded political perspective in terms of being a centrist, but who gives a fuck about that? So it does raise the question, who exactly is she addressing? Who is she trying to, I guess, make Sam look bad to with that particular clip? And the only answer I can think of is people who already don't like Sam Seder, or the same audience of people that commentators like Tim Pool or Patrick Bet-David or Dave Rubin want to poison the well with against Sam Seder. Because that's what they do. They hate him so much exactly for that same reason, because he doesn't give a fuck about their bullshit. And he's not there to play nice with people like Ana Kasparian did when she went on Ben Shapiro's platform or Glenn Beck's platform. And so she thinks she's some kind of visionary genius, and Cenk thinks he's some kind of visionary. That, oh, if you're nice to these people, you can start building media relationships with them. You can start having conversations with them more regularly. And yet the question of how does that lead to any type of progress just goes completely unaddressed. So, I don't know. I mean, that clip of Sam made me laugh quite a lot. I thought it was great. But moving on to the Project 2025 thing, she spoke for a couple minutes on this, and just to show you what she said there.
Did I, Sam? Did I mock voters who were worried about Project 2025? Because I don't remember doing that. What I do recall is chastising Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party for offering nothing to voters other than incessant fear-mongering about Trump. I also remember criticizing members of the media who simply regurgitated anything the Democratic Party claimed. I also found it fascinating that as the whole of the Democratic Party was engaging in said fear-mongering, they were also playing part in a massive cover-up about Biden's mental decline. I mean, just think about it. Democracy is under threat. We, the Democrats, insist that this corpse stay in the race to give us the best chance of beating Trump and saving democracy.
So here you see how she's still waffling on this issue. And even though she's the one showing a clip of Sam and Emma poking fun at her for getting it wrong, she is still allowing this to get her incessant enough that she is going back on the retraction that she references in the same video. She immediately pivots back to this point about how Republican voters aren't fans of Project 2025, and how the media was panicking about it, and they were acting as stenographers for the Democratic Party and all that. And it's like, that's exactly the logic that led her down the path of downplaying Project 2025 in the first place. She's still doing it. And she's still missing the point that it doesn't matter. It never mattered what the Republican base wants, especially the Republican base that depends on benefits, or depends on Medicare, or depends on Social Security, or workers in the Republican Party. acting like those were going to be the people who influence what happens after Donald Trump gets elected is just delusional. You're just not paying attention to the actual reality of what Republicans do, because you're getting way too absorbed in what Republicans say. And again, same exact thing she did that caused her to downplay Project 2025 in the first place. She was taking what Republicans say at face value, for some reason forgetting about the fact that they have been lying consistently. I mean, forever, but definitely for the last 20 years straight, and especially for the last 8 or 9 years straight. It's just what they do. So why would you ever believe anything that they say? And any pitch to voters that you're making, whether it's on the issue of Project 2025 or just in general, if it's based on the idea of that you can take Republicans in good faith and negotiate with Republicans in good faith, they're gonna stab you in the back. This is exactly what happened with Joe Biden. And again, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, both of their failures can be tracked back to trying to compromise with Republicans. And that still seems to be what commentators like Cenk and Ana and other people who aren't even really on the left, but like moderate Democrat commentators, that's the issue that they have with Democrats, is that they didn't compromise with Republicans enough. And it's insane. It's a losing theory of politics. And I think Ana is clinging to this because she has seen it as her political future. And she has kind of abandoned the idea of being progressive. And, you know, all of this is about finding progressive issues, progressive stances that can be abandoned. That seems to be the pattern of the Young Turks' approach to media for the past, I don't know what it is, like 2 years now, I guess. They're trying to find negotiable positions that they can justify and, I guess, sleep at night by abandoning that are pretty consistent core issues for progressives, like trans rights and minority rights, or immigration, or crime, not taking a tough on crime approach arbitrarily because of the frustrations that you have with poor people or homeless people or whatever. I mean, these are like pretty core progressive positions, but the Young Turks have calculated that these are the kind of positions that they need to leave behind in order to have a political future. And that's something that Ana also harps about in this video, talking about how they say that anything that you disagree, any small issue that you disagree with them on, all of a sudden you are right wing. The same victim narrative that we've gotten from TYT this entire time to cover up for the fact that they are clearly making a play to the right wing. That any issue they disagree with the left about, the reason the left goes after them and calls them out for what they're saying is because they're breaking up from the dogma, right? So they're saying one thing that's out of line and then everybody comes after you. And I mean, I think it's pretty clear at this point that the reason Ana is going in the direction she's going, specifically her, is because she consumes more right-wing media now. And she has become more convinced by different right-wing narratives about crime, about immigration. And so she's pretty consistently pushing that to her audience. And so people picking up on that and calling that right-wing is accurate. And it's not, you know, oh, you step out of line on one issue and everybody's calling you a right-winger. This is a consistent pattern, and it also has to do with your choice of words and who you're picking fights with, all the way back to the whole birthing person dispute. You know, the reason people said that seemed to be you moving to the right is because it was a weird fight to pick out of nowhere. And you are very clearly attacking the left from a right-wing position, which is not something you were doing before. So that's a move to the right. So anyway, in this last clip, and then I'll wrap this up, she brings up the Tren de Aragua gang again and says that there has been an update about that same gang. This was the gang that supposedly took over an apartment building in Aurora, Colorado, and was terrorizing the residents and blah, blah, blah. And Majority Report criticized them harshly for blowing up this story out of proportion, and that started, or at least added to, a lot of the friction between the Majority Report and TYT. So I'll play this clip to show you what she said about it and the news clip that she's referencing, and then we'll get into that a little bit.
A Colorado apartment complex plagued by suspected Venezuelan gang activity in the spotlight again after a brutal kidnapping.
They were pistol whipped, they were beat, they were victimized, they were terrorized.
Police say on Monday night, more than a dozen people approached a man and a woman, forcing them into an empty apartment where they were held against their will, and the man was stabbed. The two victims were released by the assailants after they promised not to call police, authorities say. Police say 19 people were initially detained in connection to the attack. Tonight, 16 are in Immigration and Customs Enforcement custody, according to an ICE spokesperson who says they are all Venezuelan nationals in the country without authorization.
Prior to that, the Aurora Police Department had already arrested 10 Tren de Aragua gang members from the same building. Wow, take a look at that. That's a lot of mugshots for a Venezuelan gang that definitely does not exist and definitely were not victimizing other migrants in addition to low-income Americans in that same apartment complex.
So she's making the case there that Tren de Aragua was always exactly the threat that TYT claimed it to be, and that Majority Report downplayed it. So she's essentially accusing Majority Report of exactly what she did and apologized for, which was getting it wrong on Project 2025. And so she is trying to force them to do the same thing. I don't know. It's an odd thing to do. I'm not really sure why she framed this video this way and was so purposeful in, I guess, doing this diss track. I mean, it's really just kind of a hit piece, even if you're coming from the perspective that she's valid and justified and right about everything she said. I mean, still, it's there's not a lot being accomplished here other than a call out. This isn't making a broader point about something that is wrong in their strategy, something that they're missing. This isn't really a broader critique at all, or at least the broader critiques that she hints at during the video aren't really where she ends up. Where she ends up is these call outs and trying to force people to apologize for, small mistakes that they've made. Like in the case of Emma, she brought up a couple tweets or whatever. And it's just kind of trying to drag people into the mud, I guess. But on this Tren de Aragua thing, the claim was never that there's no gang that exists. There's no such thing as Tren de Aragua. And I'm not sure exactly what Sam has said about it. I've seen his segments about it. But for the most part, the issue wasn't, is there some kind of gang activity going on there? It's, is this what the media claims it is, which there's a lot of evidence that it's not? And is it helpful for TYT to have amplified this story in the way that they did at the time that they did? That's the contention. And so this attack that has happened because of Tren de Aragua, supposedly, again, these are the same media stories that blew this up in the first place without the real evidence in terms of this gang has taken over the apartment buildings. The statements from city officials and people who aren't cops and people who aren't conservatives in media have pushed back on that narrative and said that this is not an issue of some kind of mass gang takeover, and that these areas and these buildings that are troubled were already abandoned by their ownership. And now their ownership is using it as an excuse to get all of this media attention and try to get off the hook for the money they owe and have screwed people over on with these properties. And by feeding into this narrative that this is a gang takeover because of illegal immigration, Cenk and Ana were paving the way for Trump to be elected. Quite literally. Quite literally. That's not an exaggeration. Because they were feeding the exact same narrative machine that led to Donald Trump standing on stage at the debate and declared that they're eating the cats and they're eating the dogs. Cenk and Ana's coverage of Tren de Aragua is not that many steps away from the breathless coverage of eating the cats and dogs in, Springfield, Ohio. And that's where, these shrewd media analysts that are trying to pick up on the media panics and inform their audience about things that the media is lying to you about, their sensors are off. Their radar is off. She got it wrong in the case of Project 2025 because she was taking the people who were feeding her information from the right in good faith. And I would argue that that's exactly the same thing that's happening when it comes to this story in Aurora, Colorado, which Ana is still talking about. And I think Sam pretty effectively made the case that talking about that issue in that way is not helping anybody. There's no solutions presented. Ana and Cenk are not focused on solutions. They're focused on bringing people's attention to all of this crime and all of this homelessness and all of this gang activity, because really what they want to do is they want to chip away at their left-wing to moderate audience's resistance to right-wing ideas. That's the point of presenting this stuff about Tren de Aragua and other stuff like that in this way, is because just like any other right-wing news outlet, they want to desensitize their audience to the idea of harsh, cruel, inhumane punishments and approaches to crime, even though Sam Seder is undeniably correct that crime is down. Crime is down. Cenk and Ana are talking about crime because they want to be contrarians. That's it. That's it. And so I think we really have to project here, like, what is the ideal outcome when it comes to left media? This is a scuffle that's happening right now. This is kind of like a turf war. This is some left-wing gang violence happening here, because Cenk and Ana obviously want to take up as much space in left media as they can. Cenk has declared himself as the almighty leader of the left, and so they want to dominate the space, and they view people like Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland as nuisances that they just want to get out of the way. They're low rent grifters, and so they're not offering anything because they're not taking big money from Peter Thiel companies and trying to make big media deals and that sort of thing. And it's kind of like, in the Democratic Party, even though we're not seeing this type of motion right now, disputes for leadership, disputes for who's going to run shit, like, drop down fights for like who's the leader of the party going forward. And we're seeing that a little bit on the left now within this media space. Like, which of these approaches and attitudes towards progressivism and left-wing media coverage is going to prevail? Which of these outlets is going to still be standing in a few years and still going to be representing what the left stands for and continuing to carry that torch forward? And it seems clear that TYT doesn't want to do that anymore, really. Or if they do, it's on their own terms that they've sort of invented and don't really feel the need to explain to anybody. And so, I think all of this, the inevitable result is going to be to continue to push these guys to the right. And I guess the best thing that we can do is hold our positions as well as possible and try to convince as many people not to follow them as they drift to the right, because it's not a solution to anything. They're not offering any solutions. Republicans are not going to offer any solutions, or the solutions that they do offer are going to be cruel and horrific and create more problems than they solve. This is the pattern of right-wing politics. It is very straightforward that Cenk and Ana are headed in that direction. They have been convinced that right-wing policies are the solution to problems that are caused by poverty. It's that simple, and that is the opposite of progressivism. And so we got to hold fast in our position against them. And like I've said before, I don't really want to keep covering them ad nauseum forever, but people have mentioned that, like, there is harm being done by their coverage, lack of coverage, their editorial choices. And so it makes sense to cover them disfavorably if it can push them further to the right faster, so that they eventually can stop claiming that they are the left and just leave us to continue the work that we're doing. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. That's the best way to support the channel. I'm going to be posting all kinds of exclusive content on there, exclusive podcasts, songs, beats. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all that's going to be posted there and more. If there's ideas that you have for content that you would like to see exclusively, let me know and we'll try some things out.